I think Juneteenth is a huge missed opportunity for America as a whole, especially the Black community. Unfortunately, so many people don't even know what Juneteenth is still and why we celebrate it. And the answer is that no one taught us about it, like so much of African American history.
Whether it was me growing up in Eastern Kentucky or just the failure of the U.S. public education system, the first time I heard about Juneteenth was probably last year and seeing posts on the day of. I remember growing up and hearing about Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation and maybe hearing hints of this isn't the true story, but nobody really giving me the true story either.
Juneteenth is, the day we celebrate end of slavery, but was it quite really the end of slavery?
What Juneteenth was supposed to represent, what it ostensibly represented, was a declaration of freedom for slaves, for Black people.
As we look at what happened at that point in history, we know that it was the end of slavery officially, but not necessarily truly demonstrated in society. It wasn't truly what our experience was. And though slaves were freed, it took so many years for many slaves to get that message.
What could have been happening all that time between the abolishment of slavery and these people when they just found out about it?
The South didn't recognize the Emancipation Proclamation, and then a Union general went down through the South freeing slaves on June 19th. I know in Texas now it's a celebrated and recognized holiday, and I'm really hoping with all that's going on now and everybody questioning the materials we read and reflecting back on our history, we see it widely celebrated today and in the future.
But when we think about the university's role in this, there's a teaching role, number one. The influence the university has on making sure our curriculum in our grade schools starts with the full history of slavery and all of its evil. I believe that if children grew up understanding the atrocity of slavery, that their outlook toward what needs to be done and what's acceptable as a society would be totally different than what we have right now. But that history has been whitewashed in so many different instances that the ignorance amongst the white population about systemic racism and institutionalized racism, much less our past, is just not there.
Juneteenth 2020, I think we're at that crossroads where we have to change, and America sees that we have to change.
It would be nice to say that we've made a ton of progress, right, since that initial celebration, since that day, but, we really aren't there yet.
We've made progress, but I'm really sad to see how the same conversations that were happening in 1965 are still happening today.
And the fact that we still have to convince ourselves and the rest of the world that, we are important and valuable and that you can't just kill us and there not be any consequence for that, that tells us that we still have a lot of work to do, right, before Juneteenth is celebrated in the way that, that it should be.
There's something different about this moment. Different in a way that, I think people have finally gotten to a point where they're fed up.
I don't think silence is okay anymore. Not only do I think silence is no longer okay, you can't be neutral about it. You have to decide what side of history you want to be on.
Thoughts and prayers are good and helpful, but we need some action. Right, so talk to me about how can I support you better, right? And ask them, how can you support them better? So I'm challenging all of my colleagues to do that.
There's nothing about the Black experience that is not colored, if you will, by the reality of our skin. That's benign things like what happens when we go to Kroger, to the grocery store, to shop, at a retail outlet. How we're educated, how we experience work, how we experience healthcare access. So I think a university is in a unique position to articulate emphatically that racism is an economic issue and not just a social justice issue.
In Louisville, we need more Black-owned businesses, and so that means access to capital. When it comes to economic empowerment, obviously the business school, that's their sweet spot.
I think that there's a chance here that Louisville has been put on center stage and that we can take that role and lead in substantial change at this moment. The world's paying attention. The right sentiments are being talked about. If we can act on those, we could be the change that we want to see in the world.
I think the College of Business and the professors within the College of Business could partner more with local organizations targeting and providing resources to minority-owned businesses.
Business owners trying to even just get a loan to start their business, they have to hop through a lot of barriers.
Once you find what those hurdles are and those barriers, you got to figure out a way, if it's through monetary investment, time investment, mentoring investment, you have to figure out a way, how do you take down those barriers so true equality and equity can happen. At the end of the day, there's a generational wealth divide that's huge. They started on second base.
I'm still in the dugout. I'm trying to get on deck, to even get a chance to hit a single.
And as business leaders, I think they have the most important impact to closing that generational wealth gap.
Access, resources, policy. Giving minority students, minority businesses access to the opportunities, and then giving the resources in order for them to do it, because without that, we're a step behind.
Look internally. What are we doing internally to make sure that we are inclusive, that we are equitable? And then what is our responsibility to the external society to make sure equity exists everywhere?
Internally, the College of Business is in such a strategic place. You are educating the future of business. People are graduating and entering the workplace, and eventually they're going to become the CEOs of their company.
I have some challenges for the business school, right? My first would be hire more Black teachers, right? Particularly Black females. Like I said, representation is so important. I would love to see the college expand those classes to communities that, don't have access to that sort of education, right? Help some of these aspiring entrepreneurs write their business plans, right? There's so many things that the College of Business has the resources to do that I think could be huge and really impact a lot of people and wouldn't take much from the college.
No, and I really appreciate the University of Louisville's College of Business for taking this Juneteenth project on. It's activities like this that elevate awareness within the community, and this is a process that needs to happen faster. But the more that the business and the entire university leans into issues like that, the sooner we'll get to a better tomorrow.
It's going to take white allies to make this happen. It's going to take investment. It's going to take intentionality, and it's going to take some leadership at the top that really care about everyone winning.
I hope that in 2030 I don't look back and I'm disappointed by the change.
Juneteenth 2030, my hope is that my children and their children will be able to say that, this is what happened in 2020 made a huge difference in how the world saw people who look like me and valued people who look like me. And because of that, this country and the world is a better place.
We have a true opportunity to define what equity, what humanity, what respect, what dignity means, what that looks like, how we demonstrate that each and every day in our communities and make real change happen.
I want it to be a moment of slowing down, reflecting, and looking back in the past to align our goals of the future. And I'm hoping that we see more accountability from some of our institutions when it comes to systemic racial justice.